Hello and welcome everyone to episode number 531 of the world's most dangerous podcast. This is the Riverfront Red Show, a part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network, where we discuss, you better believe it, the Cincinnati Reds and specifically the all-time Reds pyramid of greatness. And there is probably not a better person on this earth to discuss that with, because with me this week is the Podfather himself, Bill Lack. How are you, Bill?
I'm good. I thought you had Greg Rhodes on.
All right, the backup option. I love it. Quick before we get into the nitty gritty, thank you to everyone for listening and following the show. If you don't subscribe or follow us in all the places, please do. We'd appreciate it. It helps a ton. And shout out to our Patreon family over at patreon.com/riverfrontcincy, without whose support we could not do this. So please go join that family. We're having a good time over there. We just started talking about food today. I've got HelloFresh free boxes to give out to everybody. It gets crazy in the Slack channel. We're having a good time. All right, Bill. This is the rainy day episode. For some reason, even though it apparently barely rained in the area, they postponed.
It rained like hell here today.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, it rained like crazy.
I just saw a bunch of people on the Twitters saying that they could have gotten it in. I had no idea.
No, I'm not downtown. I'm in downtown. I'm north of town, but it rained. We probably got an inch out here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, stay safe out there. I'm not brokenhearted about missing Freddie Peralta and getting the Brewers and Christian Yelich out of this city. More on that in a minute, but let's start it off the way we do. A little vibes check. Joey Gaditza, member of our Patreon family, asks, "Hey, gents, where is the vibe check for you both right now? Mine has dipped a little, but we're only 12 games in after today. How are you feeling after the first week and a half of games, Bill?"
I'm okay. I'm not as excited as I was before the season started. I guess I'm kind of like Joey. I guess I've taken a little dip. There's some struggles, some things bothering me that I didn't expect to be bothering me. But there's other things that are going better than So the starting pitching, everybody was raising about now the second time, this latest time through the starting rotation, it hasn't looked nearly as good. Sounds like shortly we're going to get Nick Martinez out of the rotation. I think most of us said all winter once they signed him that he was going to be much more valuable to this team in the bullpen.
Yeah.
Candelario's atrocious start is surprised me. But, Steer has been fantastic.
Yeah.
Your brother wrote an interesting column about Steer this week.
Chad wrote something interesting?
Yeah, I know. He must have made a mistake.
He's got a ghostwriter out there.
Yeah, that's what it is. Garber probably wrote it. Interesting comparison to Tony Perez. Not in the terms of their abilities or what they do, but in the fact that they were never the best player on their team, which I never would have thought of that. I thought it was a real interesting parallel.
Yeah, that is interesting. I guess I'll have to read it now. But what that really means is that we have to get Spencer Steer a sick nickname.
No, see, I think he's just a regular guy. He just isn't, like Mike Tyson was as a boxer. He was Iron Mike Tyson, I guess. But when he was announced, he was just Mike Tyson. He came in and he was just a guy,
Spencer Steer does have a natural ring to it, so yeah, I'm not opposed to that. But yeah, my vibes are still pretty high. I'm good, man. We've had some rough weather, some bad luck out there. Some of our mashers aren't mashing, but this team had injuries to 3 of its top 9 players. I mean, the any dip in optimism I had happened before the season started.
Well, they're not 3-22.
They're not 3-22. They are better than they were last year. We'll get into that in just a second. If this team stays at or above 500, then my optimism is not going to wane until we get some guys back. There are, just like you said it perfectly, there are things to get excited about, and there's been some things that are ugly. But we're 12 games in. 12 games. We are not going to be the overreaction pod. I reserve that for opening day and the trade deadline, okay? You can't read anything into 12 games. We will try to point out what we're seeing the best we can. Yes, you can have concerns, but let's not draw any conclusions because lest we forget, a week ago, half of Reds fandom had sent Elly De La Cruz down to AAA, and now he's putting up MVP numbers in a matter of games.
And I've got another concern that it's going to fit into our itinerary a little later that I want to talk about, and this is something that does concern me. So we'll get to that in a little while.
All right, yeah, let's keep on moving. Now, quick standings update: the Reds are currently 4th in the NL Central at 6-6, 3 games behind the division-leading Pittsburgh Pirates, the juggernaut. Pittsburgh Pirates at 9-3. We got the Brewers at 8-3. Their record's looking a little bit better after their visit to Cincinnati. Cubs at 7-5, and then one thing we can all agree on is beautiful to see: the Cardinals in last at 6-7.
One of the things I do want to talk about, and I don't think this is stressed enough, is the importance of winning divisional games.
Yeah.
And a divisional game almost counts for 2 games. Because if you win a game, not only does it help you, but it hurts somebody in your division. If we beat the Mets, we only win a game. We don't care that the Mets have a loss. I mean, for wild card stuff, I guess, but for winning the division, it doesn't help us any. And since they reduced the number of interdivision games, they're even more important. They went from 18 to 12 or something, I think.
13 now, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to win these division games. They can't keep letting the Brewers kick their ass all around the ballpark. They got to play better in the division.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I did some quick glancing into last year. Last year was the most exciting Reds team that we've had in a long time. We had so much fun last season. And some quick stats. Last year, they were 3-10 against the Brewers, which moved them to 9-23 against Milwaukee at Great American Ballpark since the start of 2020, by the way. That team
pandemic
owns the Reds right now. They were 7-6 against the Cubs, only team that in the Central that they had a winning record against last year. 5-8 versus the Pirates, and lest we all forget again, the Pirates were garbage after a hot April last year, and they were 6-7 against St. Louis, and that's the worst St. Louis team we're going to see in a long, long time. So they were 21-31 in the division, and they only missed the playoffs by 2 games.
2 games, yeah.
2 games. So
I mean, the division record was the difference. I mean, if they played 500 ball in the division, they go to the playoffs.
If they play 500 ball, they are resting dudes the last week of the season. Right. If they want to, they make it easily.
They've just got to they've got to lock in more on these games inside the division.
Yeah, there's tone setting is important. You want to come out and start the season hot, especially against a team like the Brewers who has owned you for a little while now. But there's got to be, a mental aspect to this where when you get beat around the diamond the way the Brewers have the Reds these last couple of years, the players, they got to know that, right? I mean, you have to understand we want to get these games because we want to change the narrative, but when you don't, that's going to have an effect.
When they were up the other night, 8-0, and it got down to 8-7. Don't tell me you weren't sweating because I know I was.
That was not ideal. I thought we were in for an easy night, but we're Reds fans and we're never in for an easy night. So
your buddy Ashcraft did not have a good night.
We'll talk about him in a minute. He had an incredible 4 innings, but it was
that long
rough
that
after that.
On the bench that didn't seem to help him.
I wish I could have all the stats on that because I remember at least twice last year where he had a similar thing, and it was a disaster both times.
Really?
So I'm wondering if he is just a 4 or 5 inning pitcher and has to keep building that up, or if I'm not going to say anything about the bullpen. He's been too good too many times for me to go down that road just yet. But somebody threw out on Twitter that when Lodolo comes back, piggyback Nick Martinez and Graham Ashcraft every game. So you've got Graham Ashcraft through 4, Nick Martinez through 3 or 4 into your closer.
Or you get 2, or you can get 2 out of Suter every time.
You can get as many as you want to out of Suter. I love that guy. he's a
Cincinnati boy.
Oh man, and that story about him literally going in to check on TJ Antone, even though he was going in to pitch the next inning. What a guy. Love Brent Suter. All right, let's get a real brief recap. We don't want to dive too deep into the results of these last 2 series. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Mets and then lost 2 out of 3 to the Brewers, all at home. Just a generally deflating couple of series. against the Mets, it was runs. They scored 9 runs in the one game they won, and they scored 2 and 1 runs in the games they lost. Spencer Steer did his thing, couple home runs. Montas, 5.2 innings pitched with an earned run in a game they lost. They won Hunter's start, actually, which is fantastic to see Hunter Greene bright spot. 6 innings pitched, 1 earned run, and 1 walk in game 2. Any other takeaways from that Met series that you feel like?
Yeah, that first game, Cruz came out and walked 3 guys, and that was the difference in the ball. Ended up being a difference in the ball game. When he throws the ball over the plate, he's almost unhittable.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Cruz, man.
Yeah, and in the other game, the third game, I think they only had 3 hits. You aren't going to beat a whole lot of people with 3 hits.
Oh no. So. Yeah, but you're right about Fernando Cruz. When he's on, he might be my favorite pitcher in that bullpen. Unfortunately, it's just too inconsistent, which has been a theme of this young team in this young season.
Hopefully, I mean, he's not a young guy, but he's young in the big leagues.
Yeah, and he's got a young arm
experience.
And he was a position player for years too.
If he can get those, walks per 9 down to a reasonable level, he could be a really, really important part of the bullpen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Then the Brewers come to town. We were originally a 4-game set before today's rain out. I think that we were all sort of eyeballing this as an early season test. Like, hey, can the guys go ahead and shake off the bad vibes from last season early? And, well, no, not yet. Christian Yelich, I mentioned him earlier. So glad. Put him on the plane. Get him out of here. Upgrade him to first class. He was 4 for 12 with 2 home runs and 7 RBIs in the series. Not sure why they kept pitching to him. But the Brewers just did Brewers things all series. Just cheap hits. Other than a rough defensive game in game 1, or game 2, I guess, they were just that pesky, stinking Brewers team that is around every single year. And I can't stand it, Bill.
You hate it unless you're that. And in the Brewers series, the starting pitching let us down. It was not good.
I think that's pretty fair to say. None of the 3 starters were very happy with their performances. Let's just kind of go piece by piece here. Frankie Montas, well, I guess it started with, it was Montas. 3 earned runs in 5 innings. So not awful, but by far his worst outing.
And he was really struggling.
Yeah,
really
he labored through those 5 innings. That Ashcraft game, incredible through 4. Then they had that really long delay where they scored. Would they score all 8 runs or 7 or 8 runs?
I think it was 7. And then they sent him back out.
That was the thing. So he sat for 27 minutes, I believe it was. He got hammered in the 5th, crushed. Every ball was squared up on him. It was bad. They had him timed down. He was no longer locating the way he was before, and his velocity dipped a hair. So Bell does what David Bell does and sends him back out for some mind-blowing reason that I will just never, ever understand. And, of course, he gets hammered again, and it would have been worse. But Stuart Fairchild made one of the best plays that we'll see all year.
I was gonna say, I thought that was in that game. I couldn't remember for sure it was in that game. That was a heck of a catch going up over the fence.
Yep, that was the first out of that inning.
As being a non-Stuart Fairchild fan, you have to give him his due when he,
Yeah, I've said this online. I've enjoyed the Stuart Fairchild experience so far. Well, a lot of season to go, a lot of time for me to be proven right or wrong based on the various takes I have at various weeks. But so far, he's been all right. And then Hunter, we'll close out with Hunter because we're going to talk a lot more about him and this next guy. But he was actually, you know what? Let's just do it right now, Bill. He was terrific against the Mets. Mm-hmm. He was everything we wanted to see out of him. Low walks, no home runs, 6 Ks, 6 innings. Just a beautiful outing. You can't ask for anything more. Well, it was kind of a disaster against Milwaukee.
In many ways.
Yeah, 6 earned runs, 2 in the first, 3 in the second. Gave up 5 really, really early. The game was virtually out of reach from the get-go. Didn't get much better. What did you see from Hunter's start yesterday? Yesterday, as we are recording this.
Again, some of them were just cue shots. I mean, everything wasn't hard. I'll tell you what, and this is going to get into something I'm going to talk to him a little bit later, is one of the things that bothered me the most was when he didn't back up home plate. I lost my damn mind when he didn't back up home plate. Cost us 2 more runs.
That was bad. There's no excuse for that.
And that's something else I want to talk about a little bit later. But I'm not worried about Hunter. I don't know if we're at the point where it's fair to say he is what he is. I can't say that I've seen a whole lot of improvement from him from one year to the next. Because, last year before, you saw good starts and bad starts. Mm-hmm. What I want to see out of Hunter is start to see some consistency. Mm-hmm. The other thing that concerns me, well, I don't want to say concerns me, but I talked about this. I mentioned this in the Slack channel one night when Hunter was pitching. He was supposed to be working on new pitches, and for the second year in a row in the offseason, spring training, we've heard about him using new pitches, and he's not using them in a ball game. The other night he was getting his ass kicked. Why not try him? Not going to hurt.
Yeah, I tried looking up some of his pitch stuff, and it seemed like he did throw a higher percentage of the splitter and change yesterday. I can't speak to the effectiveness of them. Obviously, not very, and I don't know how many he threw. But, what I will say is wanting consistency, absolutely. It is hard to disagree with that. What I will push back a little bit on is that we're not seeing progress, because that's been a big part of the narrative since yesterday and really all offseason long. People are saying that he hasn't been progressing, and I just don't agree. Shout out to Bryce Spalding on Twitter for these stats. In the last 33 starts for Hunter, he's got a 4.01. It's a 3.65 FIP. FIP is fielding independent pitching. It's sort of like what your ERA would be if everything else was neutral, was league average.
Right.
If he had a 3.65, then we would be having a very different conversation. Even yesterday, you talked about how a lot of those were just cue shots. His FIP yesterday was 3.93. So they think that he should have only given up 3 earned runs instead of 6.
I'm looking at him online right now. I'm looking at his numbers right now. Mm-hmm. And he from 2022, his FIP was 4.37. This year it's 3.93. Is that an improvement? Yeah. His WHIP is less than it was last year, but it's not as low as it was in 2022.
Well, and also, 2022 he was maybe a little too good a couple times. That has blinded us a little bit. And that's the frustrating part, right? He has the pedigree. He's shown these flashes of brilliance. That's why that consistency comes into play. But man, I just think we have to keep banging the small sample size drum until it's not a small sample size anymore. He was not great yesterday. He had some really bad luck. In his outing yesterday, the Brewers' expected batting average was 189. They were not supposed to get hits with the quality of contact they made. They found holes. That's going to happen. So I just really think that we need to let these things play out over the course of 162 games before we start giving up on once-in-a-generation talents.
I don't want to say – I hope it doesn't sound like I want to give up on this kid. I don't.
No, not at all. But I've been hearing too much of this from other Reds fans out there.
I don't know what people want the Reds to do. If you're disappointed in what you're getting right now in Hunter Greene, right? So is Hunter Greene.
Yeah.
But what do you – and what is your answer? Putting him in the bullpen? That's a terrible idea. He's never going to get any better in the bullpen, and he's not going to be nearly as valuable as he will if he becomes a decent starter. Send him to Louisville? That's an idiotic idea. You think you got somebody down there that's better than he is? No, you don't. He's a young kid. You got to give him time to work through and hopefully gets better.
I get so fed up with this instant overreaction nonsense. If he had back-to-back outings like he had against the Mets, another 6 innings with 1 earned run, we would be talking about, has Hunter Greene arrived? Has he finally made it?
Sure.
If a lot of those grounders had found gloves yesterday, we'd be like, all right, that was not perfect, but a step in the right direction, because he had 9 strikeouts, by the way. He is third in Major League Baseball in strikeouts this season.
I say the same thing whether guys have a good day or a bad day. Young players are going to struggle. Your brother and I have been saying it for 25 years in these forums. Young players are going to struggle, and he's a young player. Lance McAllister posted some numbers today that Hunter Greene's
this is great
numbers are very, and I didn't write them down, but they're almost identical to Johnny Cueto's at the same point in their career.
Slightly better.
Yeah.
Slightly better than Johnny Cueto's.
Almost identical.
Almost identical. So
So
keep these things in mind. Keep that perspective. I mean, he's got his home runs down. He's only allowing 1.18 per 9. That's a big improvement compared to what it was. There has been progress. Maybe not as much or maybe not as quickly as we all want. And he's not an ace yet. And maybe he never will be. I'm not Nostradamus. I can't tell you. But I can tell you that he's an extremely young pitcher who's had to learn how to pitch at the big league level and who is absolutely figuring things out on the stinking fly.
I don't know that I buy the learning to pitch at the major league level. I don't think it's any more than any other young guy that comes up.
He had very, very few innings in the minor leagues.
But a lot of these guys do. I mean,
he had less than most.
Then they shouldn't have brought him up. Then the argument should be that they shouldn't have brought him up.
Well, I guess that goes down to the conversation. Do you want your best pitchers in the organization on the roster or not?
But if they're not ready, they're not the best pitcher.
Well, you can be not ready and still be better than Connor Overton. No offense, Connor Overton.
That's good. Yeah, that's true. But you've given them an excuse to use the Homer Bailey defense on him. We rushed him to the majors and blah, blah, blah. So,
well, one thing we know about Reds fandom is that we will always find an excuse.
Well, but my guess is that's not just the Reds. My guess is that's baseball sports. Here, the same thing in every sport. Your guy's either a hero or a bum, depending on the moment.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Bill. So let's get the negative. Now that the negative is out of the way, we got to talk real quick about somebody else who Reds fandom wanted to crucify the other day and is now maybe the best player in the history of the world. Elly De La Cruz. What can you say about Elly? How quickly the narrative can change? Going into the Milwaukee series, his slash line was batting average 242, 324 on base, 394 slugging, an 8% walk rate, and a 46% strikeout rate. Yikes. Bill, the calls to send him to AAA were loud and proud. He's a bust. Billy Hamilton 2.0. All the nonsense. Well, haters, how about now?
See, I didn't even see any of that because I don't.
You are smarter than I am. Now his slash line is a 318 batting average, a 375 on base percentage with a 659 slugging, a 172 weighted runs created plus. That's just MVP level stuff. He dropped his strikeout percentage by 11 points. He's got 6 stolen bases. Leave the kid alone and enjoy the ride. What are your Elly thoughts, Bill?
I love Elly. He's going to struggle. He's on a hot streak right now, and he's going to go through a period where he looks terrible again. In the last few days, the only thing that in the last homestand, the only thing drove me crazy is he struck out twice with the bat on his shoulder for 3 pitches in a row, and he did it twice.
Yeah.
That aggravates me. But young players are going to struggle. I mean, if there's the only player, and I've said this a million times, the only player that I compare him to in terms of excitement in the ballpark is Eric Davis. He is pure. The other night when he hit the ball to center field that skipped by, my wife was in the kitchen, and the minute the ball hit the ground, I said, he's going to touch them all.
He's such a special talent, and if you haven't yet, go check out Chad's latest on his Substack and leave the kid alone. He's so much fun. He has such a joy that he plays this game with. Doing his post-game interview in English also was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Could not be happier for that guy. He loves baseball. He loves being in Cincinnati. Let's just have a good time with this.
And I'm going to talk about him a little bit when I get to our later subject too, but we'll get there.
Sounds good. Bill, we talked about inconsistency a little bit. Do you think that, I know it's early and we shouldn't be reading anything. We keep saying that all the time, but do you think this is something that can be expected with a young team? Or do you think it's more of a systemic issue?
I think it's a number of things. I think part of it's young players, and we said all winter that all of these guys were not going to progress. There are going to be guys that are going to be struggling. I think there are guys struggling right now that are going to be fine, and we'll talk about that in a little while.
Whoa. Let's be fair. You said that. I was full of nonsense, and I said that the Reds are going to have like the top 9 voters in MVP this season.
I didn't expect Candelario to be as bad as he's been early on.
And it has been bad.
And he's been bad, and we can't afford for him to be bad because he's going to play every day. No matter how bad he gets, he's going to play every day, at least until August when Marte gets back. He's going to play every day.
Yep.
But the other thing that's bothering me, and this has been the subject that I've been alluding to for 10 minutes here, is the fundamentals on this team drive me crazy. And I don't know whether it's something that Bell doesn't stress, whether he doesn't call them on it when they don't. In the first 2 homestands, how many pop flies have we seen drop in because they didn't talk? Way too many. We had a non-throw from center field where it looked like the guy didn't know how many outs there were.
Yep.
We had Greene not back up the plate the other night. We've had Elly make 1,002 errors.
He's had a few.
and errors are going to happen. They are going to happen. But what bothers me with Elly's errors is they almost seem like he's either not concentrating or trying to nonchalant plays. And I could be completely wrong. I'm just saying the way they appear to me. But and I'm not saying he's not trying or anything like that. Everybody's trying every play. But my question is, these things cost you ball games, and in a division that's expected to be as tight as this one is, you can't afford to give ball games away for bad fundamentals. So my question to David Bell would be, do we stress fundamentals? And when these things happen, are they brought up after the game? I don't care whether you take somebody aside and do it individually or you do it in a clubhouse meeting. But somebody needs to know they made a mistake. I mean, they know they made a mistake, but they need to be called. You need to be accountable for the way you play on the field, or else there's no reason that you won't do it again.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly can't speak to whether or not David Bell is holding them accountable behind the scenes. We can hope so because it's been sloppy. I think some of that's going to come with a young squad, but if these things are still happening in June and August and September, it could very well, like you said, be the difference between a playoff berth or not, or a seeding position. The
other thing is part of this stuff's going to happen because this is not a very good defensive team, and it's not going to be a very good defensive team.
But you can make the routine plays,
right? And that's what the fundamentals. The great plays, like that play that Elly made the other night when he went down the left field line and ran 100 feet to catch that ball. That was an incredibly athletic play. That's not a play that fundamentals have anything to do with. You got to be a freak to be able to make a play like that.
Yeah, I think sometimes with Elly's stuff, he is trying to just come to terms with his athleticism. Like he's rushing things. He's trying to do too much, trying to figure out what his body will allow him to do. But he's also trying to make it seems like, I shouldn't ever say that he is. I don't know what he's doing. It seems like he's trying to make the web gym play instead of just the basic.
I don't want that. I don't want that. Make the play.
Yeah, get it done. So
I said the same thing when Brandon Phillips played second base for the Reds.
Yeah.
Did you hear? Was it Larkin or somebody? I heard somebody say the other night they questioned whether he was playing with a glove that was too big.
I don't remember who said that, but I
saw
that people were bringing it up. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. There's people out there that think Ben Simmons, the basketball player, shoots with the wrong hand. So Elly playing with the wrong size gloves.
And I'll be honest, when I listen to Barry, he most of the stuff he says is such nonsense. It goes in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
But
I try not to listen to Barry.
He knows a hell of a lot more about playing shortstop than you or I do.
More than most people on God's green earth. All right, let's move on here. You mentioned Jamer starting slow, and it's been pretty bad. CES has also started really slow, and member of the Patreon family, Kyle Kapler, says, CES, what's up? I guess real quick, I'll just say that I'm not worried about CES. but it's been disgusting. It's been really, really ugly.
I'd give him a night off. I would have given him like the last game of a series off with a day off in between, just to give him a chance to go.
Well, this is part of the thing that I wanted to talk about here was what's up with David Bell and his lineups? Why can't you give guys days off? And why do you have to keep trotting out the two coldest hitters in the lineup in the 3 and 4 spots? You don't have to do that every single game. It's not a referendum on their ability to bump them down to 6th or 7th when they're struggling. Let them get hot. They'll come back up. Bench them when they're ice stinking cold.
I do want to say about CES, though. When he's hit the ball, he's squared it up.
He's been making solid contact even more lately.
His exit velocity is at 92. His barrel percentage is at 10.5, which is like 3rd or 4th on the team. His hard hit is 44%.
And that's with an abysmal start.
Yes. Well, but the thing that I want to see get better, and it's not going to get great, but it's going to get better, is his walk rate has got to go up. He's walked one time.
I think he had his first walk yesterday or something.
Yeah.
Got to see a little more of that. And I get it. You're young. You're this power hitter. You want to go out there and make a difference every swing. And honestly, it looks like that's what he's trying to do. Take what they gave you. He's going to hit a lot of doubles, and he's going to turn a lot of doubles into home runs because he's so strong. He needs to let the game come to him a little bit, I think.
Well, I think also when you're struggling a little bit, your walk rate probably goes down when you're young, especially when you're young, because you want to get out of this slump. You want to do better. You want to get the bat on the ball, because if you get the bat on the ball, I'm guessing he's hitting in a lot of bad. I won't say a lot of bad luck, but he's hitting in bad luck too. He's hitting ropes at people. He's, like I said, at 92 miles an hour. That ain't nothing to write, to sneeze at. That's that's a higher exit velocity than Steer. Higher than Benson. Good. So, it's only, a little bit under Elly. So I won't say I'm not worried about him, because anybody's struggling this bad, but I think he'll be fine. If I could give him a day off, I'd have gave him, like, if they'd have played today, I'd have given him today. Well, they don't have a day off. I would have liked to get him had a day off with an off day the next day. Yeah. It really gets 2 days. You could, even though you probably end up pinch hitting or whatever, but this kid can hit. He's going to hit.
Yeah. That's where I am. Let's get into the news of the week. There are a few things that we should absolutely touch on. The first one was just extremely, extremely deflating news. TJ Antone is going to undergo elbow surgery, a third surgery for TJ. Tore a tendon completely off the bone and suffered a partial ligament tear in his right elbow. Surgery is today, as people are listening to this, just a brutal setback for Antone, who had Tommy John in both 2017 and again in 21. You hate to see it. Get well soon, young fella. It just stinks. Any Antone thoughts?
I've never heard anybody say anything but wonderful things about him. He must be a heck of a really nice guy, and your heart breaks for him.
Yeah. He says he's gonna make that one more attempt at a comeback, and he says he owes it to the kids out there that will find themselves in a similar position, and we wish him nothing but the best.
On the Antone situation, though, this is another Reds front office thing that I never understand. They put him on the 10-day or the 15-day or whatever injury list that was. They didn't put him on the 60, which would have freed up a spot on the 40-man roster. They called up Spears the next day, and he pitched 4 innings. Didn't pitch really well.
No, got thrown to the wall.
He wasn't going to be, they weren't going to be able to use him for a day or two, but they didn't send him back down and bring anybody else up. Where theoretically, they could have, brought somebody else back up. So they end up playing short. Now, it didn't end up hurting them, but it's just another mindset of the Reds front office that I don't understand.
Yeah, they seem to really value these the 40-man roster and players with options and stuff, and they are people that know more about that than I do. So I'm going to, I guess, let them figure it out, but it is confounding.
But why wouldn't they send Spears down after you pitched 4 innings and wasn't going to be able to pitch for a day or two? Why wouldn't you send him down?
Get the Louisville.
Somebody back up from Louisville. And now Santillan is the obvious guy to me. And that you would have needed a spot on the 40. So you put you put Antone on the 40 or on the 60-day, then you got a spot on your 40. You can bring Santion back up.
And let's be honest, there are people on the 40 man that are worse than Tony Santion, and I like having the best players.
Well, but if you put Antone on the 60 man, you don't even need to lose anybody.
Yeah, it's
makes no sense.
I certainly don't have the answer. I agree. It makes no sense. Next up, Bill, I want you to speak on this a little bit if you can. Pat Zachary passes away. Zachary was a relief pitcher, key contributor to the Big Red Machine.
He was a starter.
Starter. Oh, I'm sorry. Starter. Some of his teammates had some really wonderful things to say about him. Johnny Bench said that he was one of the great characters and an unbelievable teammate. Doug Flynn said you couldn't find a better teammate, and we'll all miss him dearly. Any thoughts or memories of Pat Zachary?
A little bit. He was the rookie of the year in '76. Went 14-7 as a rookie on a Big Red Machine, 2.74 ERA, threw 200 innings. Made 28 starts, doing 38 ball games. He had 6 complete games, 1 shutout. He's probably most famous for being part of a trade. He was the centerpiece in the trade that brought Tom Seaver over to the Reds.
Oh.
He really never had another season that was anywhere close to as good as his rookie year. I mean, he had an ERA plus real high in 83 when he was with the Dodgers, and he was 31, but he was a reliever by then. But in '77 he was traded to the Mets, along with, was it Doug Flynn?
Doug Flutie.
Doug Flutie. Oh, that's what it. Then he threw a pass. No, Doug Flynn, Steve Henderson, and Dan Norman and Pat Zachary to the New York Mets for Tom Seaver on June the 15th, 1977. So that's probably what he's most famous for.
Yeah.
But again, now we've lost 3 members of the Big Red Machine already this year.
You hate to see it. So all the condolences to Pat Zachary's family.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your contributions to Red Leg Nation.
Absolutely.
The entity, not necessarily the website. I don't know if he contributed much to that. A few more items here. Ian Jabot, rehabbing in Triple-A now. He started out in Single-A, and he's expected back around April the 20th.
Hope he starts being more effective.
I hope he's better at pitching than he
is. He's not been effective in his rehab starts.
Yes, not. Another guy that if he ends up taking Tony Santion's spot for long, granted, I get it, lefties, righties, whatever. I like good pitchers. Brandon Williamson and Alex Young also rehabbing. It's looking like they don't expect to be back until late May. That Williamson piece, I'm certainly keeping an eye on. Our bullpen's been pretty good, so I'm not going to get too worked up about it. But Brandon Williamson is a talent and a depth piece that this team is really going to need as the season progresses. But most importantly, Nick Lodolo set to make his major league return Saturday against the Chicago White Sox. They will be skipping the aforementioned Nick Martinez's start in the rotation, and I would expect them to keep that there, keep it that way. Bill, how pumped are you to have Nick Lodolo back?
Very much so. Before I get to that, I predict Williamson makes 7 starts for this team this year.
7, okay. I certainly see it.
As for Lodolo, he wasn't real effective his last time out for Louisville, but he threw strikes, which is a good thing, and he was healthy when he got done. I'm very excited. He's never had trouble getting people out. His problem is getting out there to get people out.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can keep him healthy, he's a big bonus, a big addition to this team, because he can get people out in the big leagues.
And he will be taking that Martinez spot. Another guy that could really show the value of having a Nick Martinez, because I can't imagine they're going to just trot Nick Lodolo out there for 7, 8, 9 innings as he's ramping up here. So having a guy that can go multiple innings like Nick Martinez, like Brent Suter, becomes ever more important when you are sort of nursing a guy back. And it just is kind of nice to see that this rotation could, good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, be at full strength, relatively full strength for a stretch here. I mean, Abbott has not been the Abbott of last season, but he's been decent. Graham Ashcraft is either the greatest pitcher alive or the worst, depending on the inning.
On the inning.
Frankie's been solid. Hunter's going to be fine. And getting Lodolo back, who, let's be honest, really has ace of the staff potential, is pretty cool. All right, Bill, I think it is time.
Okay.
I think it is time for the topic of the week, and that is the Reds Pyramid of Greatness. I listened to a Bill Simmons podcast this week, and they did a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode pyramid. That's how I stole this idea.
Okay.
And I can't think of anybody better except for Greg Rhodes to go over this with, because you have seen my tier, my tiers. I have not seen yours. So we're going to use this as sort of just like a discussion, bounce things off each other, and see where we end up. And obviously, we would love to hear what you listeners out there or viewers think about this. Comment on YouTube, tweet at us, email us at team@riverfrontcincy.com with any of your thoughts, agreements, disagreements, or just any general questions. We'd love to hear from you. So the way this works is 5 tiers, Bill. 15 spots, classic pyramid, 1 on top, then 2 on the next level, then 3, then 4, then 5. And let's see who lands where. Now, I prioritize careers, but I did give added bonuses for time spent specifically with the Reds. And I think that could come up particularly in the later tiers. So
and I looked at strictly Reds careers.
Okay. That is going to feed this conversation a little bit, because some of my guys were pretty darn good in other places. But for me, my level 1, my top tier, this is the GOAT. This is the greatest Cincinnati Red of all time. I have Johnny Bench.
Tough to argue with.
He was second all time in team wins above replacement, behind someone on my next tier. I place so much value on the position that he plays. I think that he has the strongest argument to be the best catcher of all time. I think you can argue he's the best offensive catcher of all time and the best defensive catcher of all time. Whether you agree or not, you can make the argument. And when you're the best to ever do it at what, in my opinion, is the most important position on the field, it kind of lends itself to being a team GOAT. 2-time MVP, 10 consecutive Gold Gloves, 14-time All-Star, 13 in a row. Also, he only ever played in Cincinnati, and I like that.
And he was a 10-time MVP vote. He got MVP votes 10 times, and 4 times was in the top 10.
That's nuts. Also, Rookie of the Year, team leader in career home runs. Any accolade you want, you can find it to justify this argument. My question to you is, do you agree?
It comes down to whether you look at how highly you value the position he played and longevity with the team. I guess you're looking at career versus peak or shorter career with the team. My argument would probably be Joe Morgan.
Okay.
Even though I could go either way. Morgan played here 8 years, came to the Reds at 28, 8 All-Star games, 2 MVPs, 5 times got MVP votes, all in the top 10, 5 Gold Gloves, led the league in on-base percentage 4 times. He's a Reds team WAR per season. The top 10, he has 5 of their top 10 WAR per season, and nobody else has more than 1.
In that 1975 season, when he had 12 replacement.
Yeah, look at the numbers from him for 1976. His 76 season was even better than his 75. Hang on a minute, let me pull this up.
All right, well, since you can go either way, and I feel pretty strongly that it's Johnny Bench 1 and Joe Morgan 2, and I am the host, let's go with Johnny Bench 1.
That's fine.
Team GOAT. Now, let's keep going on Joe Morgan, because I also have him near the top anyway. I had him at number 2. And these are legends. The second tier are only 2 players. It can only be 2. Bill, you've mentioned that Joe Morgan is the best player you've ever seen play.
He's the best player I ever saw play every day. Yes, absolutely.
Much like Johnny Bench, there is an incredible argument that he is the greatest second baseman ever to play the game. He could hit for power. He played defense. He could run like a deer. He could do everything you ever wanted on a baseball field. He also had, I lost it here. Pull it up. He had 57.9 wins above replacement for the Reds, and he only played 8 seasons for the team.
And was featured in Ball 4.
And was featured in Ball 4. A fantastic book, and cannot go without being said. So if you're okay with it, if you give me permission, I have
absolutely.
Joe
but
Morgan.
I want to throw something in that I discovered while I was doing a little bit of research today.
Please.
When Morgan won the MVP in '76, there were 6 Reds that got MVP votes in '76.
What?
Morgan was first, Foster was second, Rose was fourth, Griffey was eighth, Eastwick was 13th, and Geronimo was 25th.
That's wild.
I can't imagine that in '75 only 4 Reds got MVP votes. I can't imagine there's been many times that a team got more than that they got 6 guys got MVP votes on the same team.
That is insane. Somebody look that up and let us know if that's the most ever. Also, this reminds me of something that I've been wanting to do, which is with the Patreon family, do a watch along of the 75 World Series. Because there's a lot of people in that group that saw it live. There's a lot that never have. Those videos are available. So Patreon family, let me know if you guys want to do that, and I will set it up and we can get that done throughout the course of the season.
I'd rather do the 76 because I've never seen that.
Okay. Porque los dos. Let's do both. All right,
so,
Bill. Who
so
do
we're
you
still
have
on level 2, huh? And you've got, and your other one is Peter Edward.
That is it. I have Pete Rose as my second tier, I guess, arguably second or third best Red of all time. Who do you have completing your second tier?
I have Frank Robinson.
I think that is pretty fair. My one note that I have for Frank Robinson on my personal notes here is could argue that he is a tier above. So make the case.
10 years with the Reds. 7-time All-Star rookie, one rookie of the year, 9-time got MVP votes, won the MVP once, 6 top 10 MVP years. OPS with the Reds was 943. OPS plus was 150. And if you ever want to see something incredible, look at what he did the first year in Baltimore when he got traded as an old 30, when he hit 49 home runs, hit 316 with a 410 on-base percentage and a 637 slugging and a 198 OPS plus the year the Reds traded him away.
And that's why they traded him away. They thought he was
an old 30.
He was too old.
He left before before his career tailed off. And I was looking at his numbers in his career, and he played till he was, how old did he play? He played till he was 40. He retired in 1976 when he was a manager of the Cleveland Indians. He never had an OPS plus below 100 in his whole career.
Wow.
That's crazy.
I think you may have convinced me here. Let's talk it out a little bit more. I also noted that Frank Robinson is the only player on this list that you could argue, don't necessarily agree with it, but you could argue is the greatest player of all time for 2 different franchises.
Yeah, I think you can make that argument. Absolutely.
Only player to win an MVP in both the National League and the American League. Also, in 1975, he became the first African-American manager in Major League Baseball when he was hired as a player manager for Cleveland. He also became the first in the National League history and won Manager of the Year with Baltimore.
With the Giants. With the Giants.
Giants, sorry. So just about as well-rounded and important and impactful of a career as you could really ever pray to have. So I think you've convinced me.
And
Frank Robinson.
From everything you've ever read, from everything you've ever read, you didn't want to knock him down because he'd just get up and be pissed off.
Yeah. Everything you love in a ball player. All right. So we can find a plenty of other reasons to ding Pete Rose, and we don't need to get into too much of that here. But Pete, we're bumping you down to tier 3.
And he's still going to be in pretty good company.
Yeah, pretty good company. So level 3, this is all Hall of Famers or, future Hall of Famers, perhaps, depending on your particular vintage. So we'll start with Pete Rose since we talked on him. Team leader in career wins above replacement at 78, 2-time MVP, 17-time All-Star, 2 Gold Gloves. He had a couple hits throughout his career. 4,256, if you want to get specific. Never to be remembered, Bill, as the most ethical Red of all time, but certainly as one of the greatest. Any issues with Pete being here in tier 3?
Captain of the Big Red Machine.
Captain of the Big Red Machine. Important.
And he only won 1 MVP.
Only won 1?
Yeah.
How did I get that wrong? Because I get things wrong all the time.
When you said that, I went and looked. He came in second in 68, won it in 73, fourth in 76, and fifth in 75.
Well, I stand corrected.
Led league in hits 6 times. Led league in batting average 3 times. 2 gold gloves in the outfield. 13-time All-Star. He's Peter Edward. And I went to the same high school he did.
Say what you want about all the crap that he has done off the fields. It's disgusting. It's despicable. But when it comes to, we're talking about baseball players for the Reds, Peter Edward Rose was one of the very, very best. So we'll say we start off level 3 with Peter Rose.
Yep.
Who do you have up next?
Joey Votto.
I, too, have Joey Votto on tier 3.
Gold Glove, 6 All-Stars, MVP, 9 times MVP votes, 6 times in the top 10, a 920 OPS plus with the Reds, 144 OPS plus rather, and led the league in on-base percentage 6 times in his time with the Reds.
Yep. He has the career leader in walks, both intentional and unintentional, and on-base percentage. He's 4th in team history and wins above replacement. He absolutely should have 2 MVPs. He got robbed by Giancarlo Stanton one of those years. He was the greatest Red for an entire generation of Reds fans that had to suffer through some rough times. I think he's a surefire Hall of Famer, and some people wonder why we wish he was batting instead of Nick Martini. Love it. Joey is on tier 3. Okay, also on tier 3 for me to round it out, I have none other than our announcer himself, Barry Larkin. Did you have Barry or someone else?
I have Barry there also. And Barry never led the league in anything.
That came up in my research for this, and I was a bit surprised. He was just very good for a long time. 3rd most wins above replacement in team history, is a Hall of Famer, won a World Series, 1-time MVP, 9 Silver Sluggers, 3 Gold Gloves, a 12-time All-Star, and Bill, my mom thought he was dreamy.
3 Gold Gloves. Should have been more.
Yep.
And another Reds captain. So
there has not been a ton of those.
No. 3 in my lifetime that I know of, that I can think of.
Yeah, Barry was the first player that I fell in love with as a Reds fan. He has been such a great steward for this franchise. Number is retired, understandably, and I think he's a fantastic representative to round out level 3 here. I will go back to our viewer mail questions to round this out. James Urban says, this question is primarily for Bill. Thanks, James. Do you really think that Barry Larkin is the manager in waiting of the Reds? I hope not personally. Do you still have that opinion, Bill?
I've been thinking about this lately, and I do think that he will be considered. I think he will be offered the job. But my question, the only reason I even questioned it whether he would take it or not is he doesn't even want to travel to do the games on TV. He only seems to do the home games. So I wonder if he would want to go back on the road.
I mean, that's a good job if you can get it.
Yeah, and they've screwed Chris Welsh. I mean, I think they've royally screwed Chris Welsh. Now, I admit my prejudices. I'm a big fan of Chris's, and he and I are friendly. But I don't like what the Reds have done to Chris Welsh.
I posted on X last week that said, no offense to my guy Larkin, having Chris Welsh in the booth with John Sadak is just it's too good. It's incredible.
Well, it's a waste when he does that little bitty thing after some of the games with Annie Sabo. It's just a waste of Chris.
Yeah, he's incredible. Could use him more.
And a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And Barry Larkin may be a wonderful guy too. I don't mean to say that insinuate that he's not. I don't know.
Sure.
I've never met him.
So what we're saying here is simply that Barry Larkin is on level 3 of the Reds all-time greats pyramid, but not on the Reds all-time booth voices.
Right. And to answer the question, I think he will be offered the job. I sincerely believe he'll be offered the job. I think that's why I think he's still listed as special advisor to the owner or something. But my question, it'll be his job to turn down whether he wants to travel. If he wants to be a big league manager, which he's insinuated in the past that he has, then yeah, I think he'll be the Reds' next manager.
All right, so Bill, let's move into level 4 here. This is where, for me, it started getting a lot more difficult. There are so many great players that played long before there was even recorded footage. We've got stats, we've got pictures, we got some information. So let's just kind of talk through these one by one, and let's figure this out in real time. My first submission for level 4 is Bid McPhee. Did you have Bid McPhee?
I do, but I don't have him at level 4. I've got him at level 5, and I couldn't tell you why I have him. Only because all I'm doing is looking at numbers, and they're numbers that are so old that I'm not convinced that they translate to today's world. I think I believe he's a Hall of Famer. Second baseman, probably the second best second baseman in Reds history. But I have him at level 5. But
we'll put an asterisk beside that one. I have him at 4. 18 years as a Red, 2,250 hits. He led the league in home runs in 1886 and triples in 1887. One of the little stats that I love, little anecdote, was that he is arguably the greatest fielder of the 19th century. He led the league 8 times in put-out, 6 times in assists, and 11 times in double plays. And my favorite part about all of it is that he played barehanded for his first 15 seasons. He had a .982 fielding percentage, which was a record for 29 years, and he did that barehanded. So that's pretty cool. We will leave Bid at 4 for now, but we'll see. 4 and 5 can be pretty fluid, but we do want to lock this down. Who did you have on level 4?
I'll throw one out that you don't have on your list, Ernie Lombardi. I've got Ernie Lombardi on level 4.
All right, so I was going through all these players, and I got into Lombardi last, and I think that you might have a strong case here. So go ahead and make it.
10 years as a Red, won an MVP, won 2 batting titles as a catcher. 5-time All-Star, MVP votes 4 times, 2 times in the top 10. Has an 828 OPS and a 127 OPS plus. Again, I'll say as a catcher, and is in the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
I have to say, I think I'm with you right here. He was another guy that I just don't have a ton of knowledge about, but he's a Hall of Famer. He had incredible nicknames, which I think we have to consider, Bill.
The Big Schnoz.
The Big Schnoz, the Lumbago, Bocce. My favorite one, the Serrano of the Iron Mask.
I've never heard that one. I like it, though.
It's on Wikipedia. It's so good.
There's some interesting guys on those 39-40 Reds.
Yeah, it's we need to do a historical series where we go back through and really dive deep.
Chad and I are kicking an idea around of trying to do something on one of the older teams like we did the Big Red Machine. Yeah,
that would be great. I love it. And as a Reds fan born in the 80s, I would love to learn more about all these guys because seem to be some characters out there. All right, so I'll go up next. I had Bucky Walters in my level 4. Did you have Bucky in 4 or 5?
I have him at 4. Absolutely.
All right. So let's go on Bucky. We agree there.
11 years with the Reds, 5-time All-Star, won the MVP before there was a Cy Young, got MVP votes 5 times, top 10 3 times, won the ERA title twice, wins 3 times, complete games 3 times, ERA plus twice. His ERA plus with the Reds was 124.
Mm-hmm.
His 39 and 40 seasons, look them up. They're amazing.
Yep.
They're unbelievable.
Yeah, those seasons he led all NL pitchers in wins, ERA, complete games, and innings pitched. And in 31, he actually won the Triple Crown and MVP, like you said, and he finished third in MVP in 40.
And in 39, he also had an OPS plus of 110.
Get out of here. We might need to move him up. Yeah, he's 11th all-time on the Reds list with 43.8 wins above replacement. Won a World Series in 40. Averaged 20 wins and 26 complete games for a 5-year stretch. And pitched more than 300 innings in 3 straight seasons. So glad we agree on Bucky Walters, another guy that I just wish there was footage out there that I could go and scour because
if you can pitch 300 innings, you can tie your shoe without bending over because your arm is stretched out so far.
Thanks. All right, who else do you have on level 4?
Level 4, I have Big Clue.
Okay.
11 years with the Reds, 869 OPS, 129 OPS, 128 OPS plus. Won the home run title 1 time, 4-time All-Star. Won MVP vote 6 times, top 10 twice, and cut his sleeves off his shirts. Another guy with a great nickname, and was the hitting coach for the Big Red Machine.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, he gets bonus points for cutting his sleeves off. He had a little 3-year stretch when he was, the most feared slugger in the game. I think I dinged him a little bit from a longevity standpoint, but I have no problem with him being mentioned in this list. He was honorable mention for me. So let's keep Clue with an asterisk for now.
Okay. He's another guy too that he even in his big years, like 54 and 55. 54, he walked 78 times and struck out 35 times.
That's pretty good.
55, he struck out or walked 66 times, struck out 40 times.
Wow.
That's unheard of. I mean, that's just crazy. Okay,
all right,
who
so
do you got next?
Be my big clue. Next up for me is Veda Pinson. Did you have Veda Pinson in 4 or 5?
I've got him in 5.
Okay. Well, I'll make the case for 4. His 47.7 wins above replacement are 8th in team history. 4 times All-Star, 1-time Gold Glove. He got MVP votes in 5 different seasons. He had an OPS plus over 100 in all 10 of his full seasons in Cincinnati. He is considered one of the biggest Hall of Fame snubs out there. He's just another guy that I want to look more into, but is also apparently like a world-class jazz musician, which shouldn't be relevant for these purposes, but apparently he played a mean trumpet. He was just one of those incredibly steady, silent assassins that I think he got diluted a little bit because he played in a time with some of the best outfielders that the game has ever seen.
Yep. Absolutely.
So he's a bit overshadowed.
Well, he played next to Frank Robinson for years.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I remember seeing Pinson. In 63, he had a wins above replacement of 6.4.
Pretty good.
And that was only good enough for 10th in the MVP race.
Wow.
Willie Mays won it with a 10.6. And Sandy Koufax had a 9.9. I have no argument with Pinson at this level. He's also, I believe the last time I heard this a few years ago, I don't know if it's still true, he had the most hits of anyone not in the Hall of Fame, that's retired, wow, that's not in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if that's still true, but it was true at one time. fantastic defensive outfielder. He could play the terrace, the slope in the outfield at Crossley. They said better than anybody.
Also, just a handsome devil. All right, so let's keep Veda Pinson in for now.
Okay.
Who do you have rounding out tier 4? Right now we have.
You've got one more, and I've got two more. George Foster is my one that I have that you don't.
Okay.
11 years, won an MVP, won MVP votes 5 times, top 10 4 times, 5-time All-Star, Reds record holder for home runs. Was really when he came into the starting lineup in 75, it was really what kicked the Big Red Machine into high gear. I think his numbers, if he hadn't gone to New York, and I've heard this from other people that are a lot smarter than I am, that he was not a kind of guy that was going to flourish in the New York market. I think he kind of got swallowed up there. If he'd have stayed in Cincinnati, I think he'd be a lot higher on a lot of these Reds career lists than he is now. I think he still would have had some big numbers. Yeah,
that was sort of the book on George Foster, and I have no idea whether it's deserved or not. But Cincinnati loves the Pete Roses, the Ryan Frills, those kind of guys. And George Foster wasn't necessarily a run through the wall type of professional athlete. He was, just quiet and went about his business. That's not a slight on him in any way. It's just the way he was perceived. But that MVP season in 77, he led the league with 52 bombs and 149 RBIs, also led in slugging and runs scored. I don't know. I think that there is an argument to be made. He's only 17th all time on the team in wins above replacement. So I think that's kind of where I dinged him a little bit. There was a longevity thing, but I think there is a solid case to be made. Now, he is on my tier 5, to be fair. Just had
his peak though with the Reds.
Yeah.
The 76 season and through the 79 playoff team, he was the straw that stirred the drink.
Mm-hmm. He was when Pete Rose switched positions, that allowed George Foster to get those at bats, and that was when the Big Red Machine.
And if you look before that, he was a player, and he had really struggled. I mean, he had a pretty good year in 73, but he only had 17 games in the big league. I'm guessing he spent most of the year at Indianapolis. It wasn't until 75 when he got in the lineup every day that he bloomed.
Well, whether he ends up on tier 4 or tier 5 for us, he had tier 1 sideburns.
Yes.
And I don't think you can argue with that. Who else did you have on level 4?
Same as you, Tony Perez.
Tony Perez. All right. So make the case for Tony. You don't have to make it to me, but make it to our
Hall of Famer.
Still with us after an hour.
Hall of Famer, 7 times All-Star, won MVP votes 6 times, top 10 3 times, 820 OPS, 127 OPS plus. And he's kind of a victim of his surroundings. I think he would be considered a lot better player if he hadn't always been the second or third best guy on his team, like as Chad said in his column.
Sure.
He was never the best player on any team he ever played.
Which is wild when you are a 7-time All-Star and
end up being a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, 3-time World Series champ. One of those as a coach.
Yep.
Mentioned his great nickname. He was the king of all of your value cannot be found on a baseball card. He did all of the little things. And as soon as he got traded, the Big Red Machine stopped machining.
Almost without failure, everybody that talks about why the Big Red Machine wasn't the Big Red Machine in 77 points the figure at the trade of Tony Perez to Montreal for Woody Fat Man Fryman and another pitcher, Dale somebody. I can't remember.
Two relievers, if I remember correctly.
No, Fryman was a starter. Dale Murray. Dale Murray was the other guy that did.
Was it Frank Robinson traded for 2 relievers?
Milt Pappas was not a reliever, I don't think.
Somebody the Reds traded for 2 relievers.
Anyway.
Or the article I read was wrong. Or I'm just wrong, which is often the case. All right, so I gave you Ernie Lombardi in tier 4. Can I have Veda Pinson over George Foster?
Yes.
All right.
I think that's a fair. I think that's a longevity versus peak thing.
Yeah, and we can litigate that in the comments section. All right, so we both now have George Foster on level 5. Who is your next nominee? And this is the final level for the Reds' Pyramid of Greatness. I wish I had like a sound effect there. Ba-ba-ba-bum.
Do you want me to go controversial, or do you want me to? My controversial guy here would be Eric Davis.
Okay, make the case. He definitely made my honorable mention.
9 years. The biggest problem is the most games he ever played in was 135 in a season.
Mm-hmm.
But even in those 9 years, he won MVP votes 5 times. Twice was in the top 10. 3 Gold Gloves, 2-time All-Star, 877 OPS, 137 OPS plus, 85% success stealing bases. The most exciting player until Elly. He's the most exciting player I've ever seen. He could do everything. He's the first guy to do what 2050 or 3050.
The only comparable player to Elly the Reds have ever had.
Only 9 years, and if you look at the number of games, it's lower than probably anybody else on any of our lists. But he is, and I've said this before, and Chad and I have both said it, he is the classic what-if story for the Cincinnati Reds in terms of baseball. He had the talent and the ability, and if he could have stayed healthy, he could have been an inner circle Hall of Famer. He could have had Frank Robinson kind of numbers.
Bill, I think you have convinced me. I think that we need to memorialize the legend that was and how much more could have been of Eric Davis by putting him in this pyramid. And I am going to bump out someone on my level 5 that was probably my more controversial choice. And that was a young man named Tom Seaver. Tom Seaver had 109.9 career wins above replacement, which is just ridiculous. But unfortunately, the vast majority of those came with the New York Mets.
Right.
He was a 12-time All-Star, won the World Series, 3-time Cy Young winner, wins leader, ERA leader, and 5-time strikeout champ. But this isn't the pyramid of great baseball players. It's the pyramid of great Cincinnati Reds. And for that, I'm going to bump Mr. Seaver out in favor of Eric Davis. But I do want to replace him with another pitcher, if you will let me. Not replace him, but,
Who are you talking about?
I'm talking about a young man named Jose Rijo. Did Jose Rijo make your pyramid? He did not. Well, let me try to make the case here. His 38 wins above replacement are it's 19th overall for the Reds. I think we can all agree that his career was also abbreviated by injuries to a just terrible extent. World Series champion, dominated his 2 starts in that World Series, winning World Series MVP. His first 6 seasons ever as a Red, never had an ERA above 2.84. Led the league in winning percentage in 94, in starts 94 and 95, strikeouts 93. And you talk about straws that stir drinks, man. Jose Rijo was the guy for that World Series winning 1990 team. And the Reds have not been good much since then. And he is amongst the primary reasons that we have that team to look back on fondly. And I just felt he should be remembered here. What are your thoughts on Jose? Was it close for you?
Yeah. I thought about him. I honestly didn't look him up to get the numbers. What did you say his wins above replacement was?
He had 1 second here. It was 38 even, 19th all time.
That's good
for the Reds.
Yeah, I've got no problem with him.
A couple more healthy seasons, and he's in that top 15 pretty easily.
The other pitcher that I had on my list is Jim Maloney.
Now, that spot right there came down to him and Jim Maloney for me. So talk about Jim Maloney for a minute.
Well, he was another guy that didn't win anything in terms of leading the league, but he was pitching at a time in the era of the pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
The guys pitching in the National League at the time when he was there was, Marichal, Gibson, Koufax, Drysdale. Who am I not thinking of? I mean, there's guys I'm not even thinking of. But he was talked of in those veins, with those guys. Yeah. He had 34.4 wins above replacement for the Reds. ERA plus of 117. Another guy who his career ended quicker than it should have. He actually, if he blew his Achilles tendon out in 1970. In fact, Donnie Gullett is who came up to replace him.
Fun fact.
And he was only 30 when this happened. So, I mean, if he hadn't blown the Achilles, which, in 1970 was a completely different thing.
Sure.
He could have been the man on the Big Red machine in the early 70s. The guy that could throw it, still give you 200 innings. And even though I think Sparky would have made him crazy, but
that's got to be one of the all-time sliding door moments in Reds history right there.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 no-hitters and 5 one-hitters.
Yeah.
He was he was throwing 99 before people were really throwing like that.
We did an interview with him a few years ago, and it's still in the archive somewhere, I'm sure. If you get a chance, go back and listen to it, because he was a wonderful interview. Very nice man. He's another one that lived in the apartment complex my grandparents lived in. Managed when I was a kid, so I got to know him a little bit when I was a kid. Very nice man. And he helped my grandpa win a TV. I've told that story a couple of times.
That's incredible. All right, so we gotta think about him versus Jose Rijo. Let's power through the rest of our nominees here. I only have one person left that we have not discussed. So we agree that Eric Davis and George Foster are on there. I have Bid McPhee. Did we talk about Bid McPhee?
No, but he's on my list. I came down to I have 3 names, and they're kind of stacked together: McPhee, Hahn, and Groh, and they're all real old timers, and I don't know what to do with them.
Oh yeah, we talked about him.
Noodles
Groh is on there. Ed Roush for your consideration.
Yep, great hitter.
2-time World Series champ, 331 career batting average, second team history, Hall of Famer also. Was considered the NL Ty Cobb. In 1969, Ed Roush was voted as the greatest Red of all time by fans. That makes me want to include him on Tier 5.
Yeah, I got no problem with that.
All right, so that gives us Eric Davis, George Foster, Bid McPhee, Ed Roush, and it comes down to Jose Rijo or Jim Maloney. This is tough for me because I only got to see Rijo. You got to see them both.
Here's the deal. I guess I'd go with Rijo because he helped them win a world championship.
Okay. Let's do that, but let's hear this out. We want the listeners to let us know if they agree or disagree with Jose Rijo or Jim Maloney to round out level 5, or somebody that we have not mentioned. Other people, honorable mention was Ken Griffey Sr., Ken Griffey Jr.
Ken Griffey Jr. was on your earlier list.
He was on my first list until I just decided to lean hard into the time with the Reds.
He's another guy that, he only had 3 healthy years with the Reds, and they were good years. Well, the 2007 wasn't a great year, but it was his 2000, 2005 were really good. Mm-hmm. But he could, he just one injury after another.
Yeah. You mentioned Noodles Hahn, Big Clue, Mario Soto, Dolph Luque.
I had Joel Blackwell on one of my lists.
Blackwell, Heine Groh, all-time name. Eparixi.
Another Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Dave Concepcion, and Tony Mullane rounded out my honorable mentions. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this pyramid together tomorrow, and I'll post it out on Twitter and in the Slack channel, and let's just get people's thoughts. See who we got right, who we got wrong. We'll get Chad and Tim and Garber and Seth and Joe and everybody to weigh in. And if we need to revise this, we can. Okay, everybody but Chad.
Yeah, everybody. Chad's been barred.
All right. Well, Bill, that was super fun. I was glad to walk through that with you. I am going to have to put some more research into it because there's just so many worthy candidates. But that is probably where we should put a pin in it for the day. Any parting thoughts before we call it quits?
Let's go up to Chicago and win a few this weekend.
Absolutely. The White Sox are not exactly setting the world on fire. A good opportunity to get back on track with the series win. Thank you, everyone, for listening and supporting the Riverfront. Tell your friends, tell your parents, tell your grandparents. They can write, I don't know, snail mail to their friends and ask them to subscribe. I can give instructions if I need to. We can make it happen. We are everywhere. Likes and subscribes are awesome, and we appreciate you. And, of course, shout out to our family at patreon.com/riverfrontcincy. We couldn't do it without you. Come hang out with us. Join in on the hijinks. Shout out to Adam Dunn. Shouts to Lisa Alberto, Wayne Krenchicki, and Eli Cash. For Bill Lack and Heine Grow, this is Nate Dotson saying so long, Cincinnati.